So when you get right into it, guys, there's a lot of fucking music going on in the world right now. A lot of really great music. And I want to start this week off by mentioning something. Henry Rollins told a story about being in the killing fields of Cambodia, and how, you look down at the ground and you don't really see anything, and then once you realize that what you're standing on is the remains of human bones and stuff, and then you look back down at the ground, you realize how many are actually there. And I've started to get the impression that music is the same way. You don't really think there's a whole lot of bands from one country, or you don't think that there's a whole lot of bands of one style, and then all of a sudden you realize there's plenty. So this week was a really packed week. Had some big reviews up. Start the week off with Odd Dimension, a progressive power metal band from Italy, and they had an album a couple of years ago which was okay. I mean, I think that was the best way I can really put it for you, is that it was just okay. And after Symmetrical came out, I had written that their front man needed to kind of step up, and that maybe they could bring their game to the next level. Well, their new album, The Last Embrace to Humanity, which I thought was an interesting name, but new album, they fixed a lot of the sound issues. I think the production work is good, and the lead singer, whose name is Manuel Candiato, actually did a pretty admirable job. I mean, he holds his own through most of the album. Very, very few issues, very few weak parts. But this time it was just the track listing that let them down. They had a couple ballad sort of tracks in a row, and it's just really disappointing, because I think the album itself, the songs, individually, pretty good. But once you put them in this weird order with all these ballads packed together towards the end of the album, it just kills the momentum. And that was kind of the biggest disappointment in the album. Outside of that, I have very few bad things to say. Now, on the flip side of the spectrum, you get the amazing album by the band Grayceon. Now, I had mentioned them on a previous podcast. They feature Jackie Perez-Gratz, who is the cellist of Giant Squid, and this is a three-piece band: cello, guitar, drums. And this EP, it's called Pearl and the End of Days. It's only 2 songs, Pearl and the End of Days. But it's like 27 minutes total, or 24 minutes, and it is absolutely fucking unreal. It's one of the greatest things I've heard in a very, very long time. The way the cello and the guitar lock up, the drumming is a little bit on the avant side, and the vocals are sometimes soothing, sometimes trembling, sometimes yelling. There's so much going on. It's just absolutely incredible. And I don't even remember how I stumbled on this band, and I'm so glad that I did. And I've passed this on to a lot of people, some people who are into metal, some people who are not, and I think everybody at this point has said good things about it. So if you get a chance to check that out, I believe it's on their Bandcamp site. You can also order the vinyl from their record label, Flenser, I believe is what it is, Flenser Records. So definitely I suggest checking that out. And if you listen to it, I think you'll like it. There's very, very little that you could even think of that's not great about it. Now we had a new review from our newest contributor, Brian, and he reviewed the new Stratovarius album. And I know Brian's taste a bit. I thought he was going to end up liking it, and he didn't. And it was incredible, because nor did I. The album is just not. It's just not right. It's just not right. There's so much wrong with this album, and it's unfortunate, because Stratovarius, they're really, they are at the top of the pecking order for power metal, and the album fell flat. I don't really have much to say about it. There's just not a lot to look forward to, and I am sorry to say that, because Stratovarius is a great band, and I know Justin was a big fan of Elysium. It came out in 2011. But this is just, Brian actually uses the sentence, "It's downright embarrassing." So you have that to look forward to. Hopefully they'll rebound on their next album. Then we had the new EP from the band Diesel King. This was one that we got in the email, which I always love to get submissions from bands, because it might be bands that I would have not otherwise heard. And I like what they're doing. because you have this weird. It's kind of hard to describe what they're doing. It's this weird thing where they just, you know that the volume has to be loud. If you're not listening to this album loud, I would say don't even bother, because that's that's exactly what you need. And as I say in the review, you don't need to be complicated, and you don't need to do something like so above everyone's heads that people don't get it, or you can come out and say, oh well, you didn't like it because you don't understand it. You don't need that. You can just put out an album that's just straight ahead, straightforward, and good, and enjoy that. And I think that's what I enjoyed most about The Gray Man, is that it's just in your face, heavy, thick instrumentals, really like major distortion, but just done really well. And I mean, it's not perfect, but there's something pretty fantastic going on. And I think this is a band that's going to grow over time, and you have a lot to look forward to. And I think the vocals in particular deserve mention, because there's some really impressive growls on the album. Stuff that sometimes you almost feel like it just doesn't fit, but it's just so good you can't really complain. The only downside of the album that I really found was the last track, which has 3 minutes of just kind of distortion and feedback at the end. And that's always something I've never totally understood why bands do it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I would say this is in the middle. I don't have a problem with it, but it definitely didn't add anything. But check out that album as well, Diesel King, The Gray Man. That is definitely on their Bandcamp page, so I suggest you doing that. Last but not least, this week we had the album that caused a lot of conversation, at least from a band that caused a lot of conversation. When we began this site, it was March 2011. We're actually coming up on the 2-year anniversary, but the name Sorrow Eternal, a lot of people assumed, I think possibly based on a Google search, that we were somehow influenced by the band Eternal Tears of Sorrow, which I had never heard before. I knew of the band, but I had never listened to them before. So we got that a lot, because if you actually Google Sorrow Eternal, everything Eternal Tears of Sorrow comes up. So, it made sense. So anyway, they have a new album out called Savon Lapsy, and now I can say I'm a fan. And it's this weird blend of symphonic metal and melodic death with aggressive vocals, clean vocals, really great keyboards. There's a lot going on. There is a lot going on in this, and I'm really happy that I kind of got into this now, because I can say that I will be looking forward to new releases as well as digging back through old ones. If you haven't heard the album yet, I really suggest that you do. Whether or not you're a fan of the band doesn't matter. I think that there's enough to hear on the album where it's worth a shot. And it's not a straight ahead one. It's one of those ones with a lot of lateral movement, a lot of side to side, which is what I think keeps it interesting in the long run. So definitely check that one out. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with that. But anyway, as I was saying before, when you start to see, oh, well, this is a power metal band from Italy, and then all of a sudden you realize that there's 10,000 power metal bands from Italy. Or like, wow, I'm really getting into sludge metal. And once you start looking for it, once you start knowing what you're looking for, it makes finding music a lot easier. And whether you do it through illegal means or legal means, or however you choose to do it, it doesn't matter. It's just, finding music it's important. It really is. And I think that when you have the opportunity to hear new bands from all over the world, I think that you should really take that chance. Step out of your comfort zone. Step out of okay, you like Mastodon, that's fine, but find some other bands. Explore a little bit. Listen to bands that you would never hear. And more than anything, Bandcamp is great for that. And I know this has kind of turned into a rambling, nonsensical piece of shit, but if you go on Bandcamp and you look at recommendations, or if you just search, you want to listen to some metal, it'll bring up, some of the bigger metal bands, the more popular ones, bands that have been voted on through their site or whatever. And you can find some awesome stuff. I mean, most of the stuff I've reviewed on the site recently is either, major bands or bands that I've found through Bandcamp. And there's something to be said about, that as a means of putting out your content. So, I mean, from bands like From Beyond or Jizzlobber, which is coming up this week, or Gizlober as it may be, you can find anything you're looking for. And once your eyes have been open to a genre, for instance, me with Sludge, I hadn't really been into Sludge, and I thank Blizzard at Sea for opening my eyes to some of these Sludge elements that I was missing out on. So now, if I see something is Sludge, if I see a band considering themselves Sludge or whatever, I'll take a listen because I know that I like those elements. So think about that. I hope you learned a lesson today, but you probably didn't, because I don't think that I did either. So, in the meantime, keep listening to awesome music. We got another big batch of reviews coming up this week, and then I think you'll start to see some interesting things going on. So go back and read the reviews from this past week. Keep up to date this week. We got reviews of the new album by DGM, a very veteran power metal band, progressive power metal band. Jizzlobber, as mentioned, Schisma, and an album which I'm not going to say anything more than holy fuck. Omnium Gatherum has a new album called Beyond. So that's all coming up this week, and hopefully a little bit more. And then we got a big week the following week. We got a lot going on, let's just say that. So keep up with us, and I guarantee you won't be disappointed. All right, guys, take it easy, and see you next week.